love that song. It's such a beautiful prayer and the perfect thing that I needed this morning to get centered and right here and now. How many of you know all of your power is now?
Yeah.
That's where your access to your power is. It's now. It's not in what happened a moment ago. That's already gone. Tomorrow's not promised. Everything is in the now. It's always now. So welcome. Do we have any first? I think we have some first-time visitors. Yes, wonderful. Welcome, and thank you for joining us. Yes, we're going around. We are so excited. We've got another one over here. We want to make sure everybody gets their visitor packets and has time to ask their questions at the end of service. And
Who are you?
like who am I? Yes, I'm Reverend Cindy Grimes, and it's so nice to have you here this morning. Yes, I've been here for a little bit now. All right, so what's going on today? We are continuing on in the series that I started actually a couple of months ago, doing social and emotional intelligence, and I thought I'd be done by August, but I just kind of go with the flow and with wherever the message is leading me and Spirit is guiding. So we're continuing on, and I don't know what I'm doing next week yet, but we will find out at the end of today. So we're talking about this idea of social emotional intelligence, and today we're going to specifically talk about the art and science of motivation. So, social intelligence, aka the science of human relationships. I saw that on a book cover and thought, that's perfect. That's exactly what it is. It's the science of human relationships. And who doesn't want to get a little bit better in their relationships, right? With their spouses and children and co-workers, and that's where life happens, is in our relationships. So it's really good stuff. Social intelligence is the awareness, that is the ability to recognize and understand other people's emotions. This really presupposes that you have the skill or the ability to recognize your own. That's very helpful, don't you think, to understand your own emotions and your feelings and what that is all about, so that you can then understand what other people are going through and how to best work with them and to best motivate them. It's also about your aptitude, that is your ability to influence others by successfully building relationships and navigating social environments. Now, who could use a little of that? Right? The ability to influence others successfully in your relationships. So specifically today, as I said, we're talking about motivation. Motivation 2.0. That comes from the latest book I'm reading, that is called Drive by Daniel Pink. Unfortunately, we don't have it in the bookstore because I kind of do things on the fly. We don't always have time to order these things. But if you choose to order it, go on it on Amazon and do it through the Center for Spiritual Living, right? Smile, Amazon Smile. This one is called Drive, and it's by Daniel Pink. Daniel Pink.
Or we can get it in the bookstore.
Oh, we can bring it into the bookstore, yes. So anyway, Daniel Pink. Motivation 2.0. That's kind of a play on the idea of computer operating systems. You know, every once in a while you got to upgrade to the next level. So Motivation 1.0, if you want to go back that far, we're talking millions and millions of years. And what do you think human motivation was back 1.0? Survival, exactly, survival. That's all there was. It was all about survival. We're talking like caveman days. So as people went from hunter-gatherers and then settled down and started living in communities and having to work more with one another, they went to this, Motivation 2.0. That is called the carrot and stick. I don't know, you probably figured that out, right? You all know what carrot and stick is? So Daniel Pink says, carrots and sticks are so last century. It is time for a new way, a new way of motivating people, a new way of motivating ourselves and understanding what we're about. Carrot and stick worked for a long time, and I'm going to explain a little bit more what that's all about if you're not familiar. But the idea of the carrot and stick is really that we reward the behaviors and the things that we want to see more of, and we use the stick or negative motivation for the things that you don't want to see. So punishment, right? It's one or the other. We're either going toward what we want, you know, the carrot, or we're running from what we don't want to experience. That's kind of the stick, right? And that's how things have been. In fact, it's like our operating system. Where are my glasses? Because those are gone. Thank you. So carrot and stick is really, I think, it's part of our world paradigm. We think that that is the way that we are motivated, that that is what moves us, and that's the best way to do it. And as I said, things are now changing because we are changing. We are evolving. If you don't believe that carrot and stick is on its way out, I'll give you an example that comes from the Pink Book, the Daniel Pink Book. Okay, so we're talking about a study, one of the studies that he references in this book, research findings. This one, the first study was cited, or it was conducted by 4 economics professors, one from the University of Chicago, another one from Carnegie Mellon, and 2 from MIT, and was funded by the Federal Reserve Bank. This study was to see if monetary incentives enhance behavior, right? The carrot, right? We're going to give you more money. That's what we think. We go to work, that if you give people more money, that they're going to do a better job for you. Isn't that what most of us are taught to believe?
Yes.
So here's what the study showed. They gave groups of students a series of tasks to do. There were cognitive tasks, things like memorizing strings of digits, and then there were physical tasks like throwing a ball through a hoop, and each student was awarded one of 3 monetary incentives. In other words, the better you did at shooting hoops, the better you did at solving the puzzle, you would get a prize for it. So if you did okay, you got a small prize. If you did a little better, you got a medium prize, and if you did really well, then you got a big prize. So here were the findings of that study. As long as the tasks involved only mechanical skills, monetary incentives worked. So you got more money for better performance. However, once the task called for rudimentary, okay, so very minimal cognitive skills, that means a little bit higher thinking skills, the larger reward led to poorer performance. Now, isn't that strange?
Yeah.
That seems odd, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But now if you think about people who get like performance anxiety, as soon as you know somebody's watching or that it's tied to something else, that your performance maybe takes a dive, I'm not sure if that's part of it, but it could be. The other study, now after they looked at the results of that one, like that doesn't really make sense. Here we go. So you can see. The second one, let's say, well, maybe the stakes weren't high enough. Maybe if they added more money to the pot, you know, if they sweeten the deal a little bit, it would go better. It would go more as what was expected. So this other study they conducted in a rural part of India. And then the rewards for this one, the task that they were giving people, a small reward was 2 weeks worth of salary. A medium reward was 1 month's worth of salary. And then a high reward was 2 months worth of their salary. What do you think happened?
Oh no.
The same thing happened. The same thing happened again.
Stressed out.
The findings were that those who were offered small and medium incentives performed at the same level. So between small and medium, there was no difference in the outcome. Those who were offered the highest reward did significantly worse. Significantly worse. Now, isn't that crazy? So crazy. So here's summing up the research here. When asking for simple, straightforward tasks, you can use monetary incentives to increase performance. It works great. However, research supports that when tasks require some kind of conceptual or creative thinking, that not only does money not motivate people, it can actually hurt performance. Isn't that fascinating? I think that's just mind-blowing. He says, nevertheless, he goes on to say, don't underestimate money as a motivator. If you don't pay people enough, they're not going to be motivated to work. Employees need to pay people just enough money to take money off the table as a conversation, so they're not even thinking about it. Now they're just thinking about doing their job. Right? So money is important to the extent that we need it for survival, right? But once we get to that point, there is a place where the motivation, it has a negative effect on us. Fascinating. So the conclusion there was we're not as easy to manipulate as we believed, or we have been led to believe, which is kind of funny in itself, don't you think? We've been led to believe a lie. Therefore, we've been manipulated. But once your eyes are open, you see, once you're aware, it takes on it's a different meaning, and you can work with it differently. Again, understanding what motivates us so that we can better influence the people in our lives. So that's part of the decline of Motivation 2.0. Motivation 2.0 worked for when jobs were simple and tasks were routine and unchallenging. All right, think about when we were really, the United States was about manufacturing. Now what's happened to all of those jobs? They've been automated or they've been sent elsewhere. Right? We're not that anymore. We're moving into a new level of expression. We're evolving into something else. Just as oxen and forklifts replace simple physical labor, computers are now replacing simple intellectual labor. Now, this was a study performed by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. According to Life in the 21st Century Workforce, a National Perspective, the following soft skills are essential for today's workforce. The ability and willingness to learn new skills. Can you see where that would be important?
Yes.
As quickly as technology is moving, as quickly as things are going, you have to know. You've got to be open to learning new things. You've got to be able to learn new things. You've got to be quick on your feet. Because by the time this stuff comes out, it's already just about obsolete.
Yeah.
Critical thinking and problem solving. Those are things that computers really don't do like humans do. Collaboration and teamwork. Collaboration and teamwork. Understanding how to work with other people. Understanding how to motivate people to get the best out of them. Right? This is what we've been talking about. Interpersonal communication. Again, the same idea. How do I express myself? How is it received? Do I take responsibility for how you're receiving my message? That's an important piece of communication. Some people think I just say it, and however it lands, it lands. But if you want to be a good communicator, if you want to be an effective communicator, you want to know how it's being received so that you can express better, so you're better understood. Seems like common sense, some of this stuff, doesn't it? And then common sense isn't all that common, I guess. And then the other skill is the ability to analyze and synthesize information. This is where the creativity comes in. Again, not something that computers do, but something that human beings are really very good at. This is part of what we're wired to do, is to create. So the evolution of Motivation 3.0, this is what Daniel Pink is saying we're moving to. This is the next area. How many of you remember that? Carta, 1996. Encyclopedia Lita, did you buy it? All right, he talks about going to, Pink talks about, imagine going to your economics professor back in 1995 and saying, okay, there's two different business models we have here. This business model for an encyclopedia, okay, it was going to be on CD-ROM, it was going to be available online, and you would pay a fee to access this service. And they were hiring the best of the best researchers, writers, to put this whole program together and pouring a lot of money. Okay, it was Microsoft after all, so there was lots of money behind it, lots of research. And that was the idea. That was the new version of encyclopedia. Anyone have like Encyclopedia 2.0 or 1.0? The books? Yeah. The books. I know some people refuse to get rid of their books. And I know others who have turned them into furniture. So that was motivation, or that was like Encyclopedias 1.0, 2.0. This was going to be Encyclopedia, I guess, 2.0. That disappeared, by the way. It didn't take too long. You know that, right? For those of you who didn't know what Encarta was, how many of you know what that other thing is? Wikipedia. Anybody familiar with Wikipedia? Anybody familiar? Okay, Wikipedia had a whole other business model. Now remember, you're going to your economics professor and you're pitching Encarta, and then you're going to pitch Wikipedia. Let me tell you what Wikipedia is about, their vision. This is the vision of Wikipedia. Imagine a world in which every single human being can freely share in the sum of all knowledge. That's our commitment. Free. Free. You don't have to buy the CD-ROMs. You don't have to buy a membership. It's free. That's so interesting. The mission: to empower and engage people around the world to collect and develop educational content under a free license or in the public domain, and to disseminate it effectively and globally. We're not talking experts here, we're talking groups of volunteers. And how long now has Wikipedia been around? And do you know that all of the content on there was added by volunteers? People who were perhaps experts in their field and wanted to share that knowledge and share that expertise on their own time. Completely voluntary. I want to share the values of Wikipedia, because this also was just like astounding to me. You know, we have our value statement at the beginning. This is their value statement. We strive for excellence. With leaps and bounds as well as stumbles and false starts, we seek to continually improve ourselves, our projects, our community, and our world. The second piece, we welcome and cherish our differences. Wow. We welcome and cherish our differences. The sum of all knowledge for every single human being. That's in their mission, right? The sum of knowledge for every human being. We can't do that by leaving people out. Our vision is about more than providing universal access to all forms of knowledge. It's about creating an inclusive culture. That's the second point. The third point, we are in this together. Collaboration is not always easy. Sometimes we struggle. Working together is hard, but it's worth it. We do it because it makes us stronger. We solve problems better together. For it to work well, each of us needs to be honest, accountable, and transparent to one another. The next point, there's 5 of these. We engage in civil discourse. Wow, how about we make this a national vision? Our words have power. What we say has consequences. Engaging in civil discourse requires kindness, care, respect, tact, empathy, trust, and safety. It is key to getting, giving, and receiving good information. And then their last value, we are inspired. We are guided by a vision of a better world. We're taking on a huge challenge. We revere what has come before and are in awe of the work ahead. It brings us hope. It fills us with wonder. Wow, that's Wikipedia. Wikipedia. So now, if this all-volunteer, all-amateur encyclopedia was the only instance of its kind, of people just really being altruistic and volunteering and giving, we might dismiss it as an aberration, as an exception to the rule, but it's not. Instead, it seems that Wikipedia represents the most powerful new business model of the 21st century, open source. Anybody familiar with open source? You may not even know you're using open source software. Firefox is one of them, right? It's a free open source web browser with more than 350 million users. Linux, another company, it's another company that powers 1 in 4 corporate servers, also available for free. In other words, companies that typically rely on external rewards to manage their employees run some of their most important systems with products that were created by non-employees that don't seem to need rewards. How fascinating. Daniel Pink says this, and he sounds like a metaphysician, I think, in this line here. He says, we live in a world of breathtaking material plenty. Isn't that the truth? Isn't that the truth? We live in absolute abundance. This is really the most amazing time to be in if you took the long view of history and look at where we are now, what we are capable of, what we can do, what is available to us. It's really quite amazing. We live in a world of breathtaking material plenty. This has freed hundreds of millions of people from day-to-day struggles and liberated us to pursue more significant desires. Things like purpose, transcendence, and spiritual fulfillment. Think about it. Think about it. We don't have to spend all day long anymore catching our food, cooking it. We have washing machines and things where people would spend hours to do these chores and different tasks that we don't have to spend our time that way anymore. This is part of that evolution, right? We're not spinning in the bottom rungs. Remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You've got to meet your basic physical needs first. Well, for most of us, that's done. Right? You move up to the next level where we're talking security. For a lot of us, that is there as well. We have the security of our jobs, we've got health insurance, we've got those kind of things. What happens when those things are met? Well, then you've got time now. You want to start looking a little bit deeper. You want to look a little deeper. Daniel Pink says it's like a three-legged stool. This is what Motivation 3.0 is all about. It is about autonomy. Autonomy, feeling like we can be self-directed, like we are the masters of our fate, that we have some control over our lives. The next piece is mastery. That is the idea of continually learning and growing and want to get better at whatever it is that we're doing. And then finally, purpose. Purpose. Why are we here? Why are you here? How are you going to use all these gifts and talents and live in this amazing time and make the most of it? It's about purpose. So I'm going to break these down. Autonomy. That's freedom from external controls or influence. It's the feeling of independence. If you're sitting here in a Center for Spiritual Living or you're watching online, you're probably a pretty independent thinker, because chances are you didn't grow up in this teaching. Right? How many of you grew up in some other kind of teaching? Or no teaching? Yeah, look around. Okay, maybe it's easier to say how many of you grew up in Science of Mind or Unity? One. Nelson Mandela said, "For to be free is not merely to cast off one's chains, but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others." Right? That's beautiful, isn't it? We are not really free as long as there are others among us that are still in bondage, and whatever that bondage may be, whether it's in our families. You know, the image that's coming to mind is of, you're out there swimming and somebody, or you want to save somebody and you don't know how to swim and they pull you down. They can pull you down. You want to know what you're doing before you go out there to, put yourself out for other people. So it's about finding and experiencing that freedom within ourselves that we can then be an example for other people. Autonomy. It's hardwired in. It's hardwired in. I look at my year-old grandsons, and any of you who've had kids know little people. They want to do everything themselves. Even when they're tiny, teeny tiny. They don't want you to feed them if they can feed themselves. They want to let themselves out. They want to do everything themselves. They don't want you doing it for them. That is how we are wired to be. We all have this need to be able to do our own thing. Unfortunately, it starts to get knocked out of us pretty early on. Sometimes by people who are well-meaning, right? Think of the helicopter parent that's hovering over their kids. You can't do this by yourself. You can't do that by yourself. We have those, right? Then we have the controlling ones who always say, it's my way or the highway. My gosh, I attended a church for a little while that I really loved because the music was really good. It was a great message, and my kids were going into the child care center. There's a little problem when they came out and said, well, they told us that we have to speak in tongues, and I don't understand what they're saying. That doesn't make any sense to me. It's okay. Well, maybe that's not working so well. But it really didn't work well when I heard, I think it was a minister, talking about how we need to break the spirit of our children. So that they can become obedient. Yeah. That was when I said, see ya, can't do this one. Autonomy. And again, if you're sitting here, that's probably a very deep need for you. To that freedom of thought, right? right? To be self-directed, not have other people on you, telling you, pushing you down what you need to do, to be obedient. Gives me the shivers. Autonomy. So the next piece is mastery. While Motivation 2.0 required compliance, Motivation 3.0 demands engagement. Engagement. It's not about making you do something. It's about making whatever it is so enticing that you can't wait to do it yourself.
Yes.
And it becomes yours. Only engagement can produce mastery. That is the desire to get better and better at something that matters. That matters for you, right? Mastery begins when our challenges are matched to our abilities, and it abides by 3 rules. Now think about mastery. I think about what comes to mind for me is my husband. And my husband is an athlete, right? He plays tennis, he plays golf, he can play for hours. And mind you, we're not making any money at this, right? We're paying money so that he can go out and play these games for hours and hours and hours. How many of you play video games? Are you making any money playing video games? What's the point? What is the point of that? Be enjoying it. It's the doing, it's the task. It's wanting to get better at something. It's getting to that next level. Leveling up. Leveling up. Exactly. It's not about making money. It's about the mastery. It's about the joy of the thing that you're doing. It's the task itself. That's what we're talking about here. So mastery begins when our challenges are matched to our abilities. That means, say you're the boss. You're the boss. And you want to encourage your employees in the best way possible. You don't want to give them tasks that are beneath them because they're going to get bored. They're going to feel like they're not really contributing anything. If you give them something that's way over their heads, then they're going to give up, right? Because they'll feel like, I can't get that done. I can't manage that. Right? The same thing for our children, right? You want to give them, it's that Goldilocks thing again. Let it be just right. It's got to be just right. Not too hard, not too easy, but something right in the middle that's going to be a challenge and keep the people engaged. So we want it to be matched to our abilities. Mastery abides by 3 rules. Mastery is a mindset. It's a mindset requiring the capacity to see our abilities as infinitely improvable.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to really want to get better at whatever it is. You want to. It's a mindset. It's not a have to. Because there are plenty of people that come into this world and seem like they're just existing, really not looking like they're wanting to accomplish or to do anything with their gifts. You know? It's a shame. But there are people who are like that. But mastery is something that you have to choose for yourself. It's a mindset. Mastery demands effort and practice. Whatever it is you want to master, whether it's a musical instrument, if you want to get better at speaking, we have a Toastmaster group that meets here. And people look at me and they say, well, you're a natural speaker. You have no idea. No idea. I've been in Toastmasters for, I don't even know how many years now. I think since 2005, 10 years as a Toastmaster. In and out. But I do that because I want to get better at what I do. Right? It never ends. I never have preached the perfect service. Things never come out exactly how I think they're going to come out, but they come out the way they need to. And I trust that. One of my intentions whenever I speak or present is that what needs to be said is said, what needs to be heard is heard, and I let it go. Let it go. It may not be exactly what I thought it needed to be, but maybe Spirit had another idea. So mastery, it demands effort and practice. Mastery is impossible to fully realize, making it simultaneously frustrating and alluring. How many of you can relate to that?
Yes.
It's that thing you just can't have. It's just right there. It's so close. It's so close. It makes you keep trying. And it's so frustrating when you don't get it. Right? How many the golf thing?
Very rewarding when you do that.
It's rewarding when you do, and that's what keeps you coming back. Right? It's the joy of the task itself. This is why all these people are volunteering their time in things like Wikipedia. Right? Because it's something that they enjoy. There's a joy in the task and knowing, wow, people are going to be using this information. I'm part of something much bigger. It's mastery. The next thing is purpose. That's the other piece. So we're taught, again, autonomy, mastery, purpose is the last one. This is a story, and some of you have probably heard it. A tourist was walking through a city when he saw 3 men working on a construction site. He asked the first one what he was doing. The first one responded, "I'm laying bricks. I've been laying one brick on top of another for days and weeks, and we'll keep laying one brick on top of another for days and weeks to come." Doesn't sound very inspiring, does it? Well, he asked the next guy the same question. "What are you doing?" "I'm building a wall." "I'll probably be building it next week. I'm building a wall." That's all it is. Then he asked the third one. When the third one was asked what he was doing, he responded, "I'm building a cathedral. It's going to be a grand and beautiful cathedral, a wonderful building." Now, who do you think was enjoying their work?
The last one. Of course.
Of course, right? Of course. It's the same thing. It's the same action they're all doing. It's the purpose. It's what you see in it. It's what you put behind it. We can do this with any task, with anything that we do. Right? It's not just laying bricks. It's, it's offering, let's say for the person who's got a job, I don't know, McDonald's. It's not just serving people, but serving people. Maybe it is really serving people. Like you can make someone's day with a smile, with a kind word, with a gesture. Mm-hmm. It's all the meaning that you put to it and the purpose that you bring to whatever it is that you're doing. I wanted to say something else about that. Purpose. There's another study that Daniel Pink references where there was a group of people who were collecting money for their alumni, from the alumni for their college. I think it was University of Michigan. And it was 66 people who come together. They were volunteers, and they were to collect money for a new project for the college. So they broke them up into 3 groups. One group was the control, where they just made the phone calls. They did whatever they did beforehand was up to them, and they just made phone calls. The second group read testimonials from people who had been students at the university and had done that same work, calling alumni and trying to raise funds for the school, and all the benefits that they got. They got to write a little something on their resume. They learned communication skills. They got to practice, maybe a little mastery. Then the third group was given testimonials of people who'd been on the receiving end of those funds that had been donated. Say they got scholarships. That's what it was. It was for scholarships. So they got to read the stories of the people who received the scholarships and got those benefits. Now, of those 3 groups, the control group, the group who was reading benefits for themselves in that 5 minutes before they made the phone calls, and then the third group was reading the testimonials of people who had been helped by the money that was raised. Which group do you think did the best?
Last group.
Of course, the third group made by almost double. They raised almost twice as much money just by reading, by knowing, being engaged in the purpose of what they were doing. Right? Purpose can make a huge difference. And it's why we're here. It's why we're here. This is what I try to encourage you all. If you don't feel like you know what your purpose is yet, take some time to investigate that. And take a look at your passions. What is it that engages you? What is it that touches your heart? What are the things that move you when you're watching the news? Is it animals? Is it kids? Is it the environment? Is it just being able to use your gift of music, of art, of whatever it is that moves you? That's probably a good sign that that's a pretty important piece of your passion, but also your purpose, what you're here to express and to share. The purpose of our journey on this precious earth is now to align our personalities with our souls. That's Gary Zukov, a writer. He writes a lot of spiritual kinds of books. The purpose of this journey is to align our personalities with our souls. what I think he's saying with that is that we're here to take all those gifts that we have, all of our unique interests, and when we can take those and line them up with our purpose, that's what we're here to do, right? Is to take all of those interests and talents and abilities and line them up with our purpose. When we do that, life really starts to be fun. It is to create harmony, cooperation, sharing, and reverence for life. It is to grow spiritually. This is our new evolutionary pathway. Our purpose is to create harmony, cooperation, sharing, and reverence for life, to grow spiritually. This is Motivation 3.0. It's our evolutionary pathway. The old one, the old way, pursuing the ability to manipulate and control, no longer works. It now only produces violence and destruction. We're talking power versus force. Remember that the levels of consciousness, right, when we start to get to the top, where people get to be self-directed, once they take the courage to step into what is theirs to do, right, that's where we start to live in joy. That's where we start to embody our own power and why we're here. Before that, it's all distraction. That's probably the thing with the money. When you throw money into the mix, it becomes a distraction, right, from what you're there to do, because people start chasing the wrong things. Right? We start chasing the money, we start chasing the position, we're chasing the power, we're chasing all of these things that take us off course from what it is that we are here to do. So we come to a spiritual center like this so that we can get centered. And we do spiritual practice so that we can come back to that center and remember who we are and why we're here. Because just like that seed, I used that analogy the other day, the seed has everything within it that it needs to grow. The oak tree has everything that is needed to grow an oak tree resides in that teeny tiny acorn. But not only that one oak tree, how many other trees come from that one acorn? And it has everything it needs to create infinite number of other trees. You can't even count, because every tree that grows is going to have more acorns, and each one of those can grow more. It just goes on and on. We all have gifts and abilities and talents within us that are meant to come out and sprout. That's where that need for growth comes from. Now, when the seed doesn't get the right nurturing, maybe it doesn't grow, or maybe it comes out a little twisted. It adapts to its environment. But what we want to do for our loved ones, for our children, for ourselves, is to have the best environment possible, so that seed can grow to be all that it can be. So we spend time in spiritual practice. We nurture our talents. We practice the things we want to get better at. And we live our truth. Back to the autonomy. We live our truth, not somebody else's, not what someone else thinks you should do.
Amen.
What your life needs to be. Be true to yourself. I shared with you all last week that my uncle was my great example of these 3 principles, because he had gone into a hospice house, and he actually did make his transition Sunday evening. And we had been there with him. I'll share just one more thing. I'm short on time. I know I am, and Richard can cut this out of the recording. But I want to share this because it was so fascinating that the family was all surrounding his bed, and we were holding hands, and I was holding his hand and the hand of another family member. And we all prayed. Each one of us prayed to give him a nice send-off. And when we were done, I kept holding his hand, and I let go of this hand here, and I put my hand on his chest. And I don't know what happened, because his eyes were closed, and he just was breathing quietly. And when I put my hand on his chest, it was kind of like when somebody puts paddles on someone to bring him back, that his body popped up, and his eyes opened up, and I thought, I don't know what that was, that jolt of something. I don't know what happened. And as the days went on, I got this feeling, and he passed that evening, that, wow, it wasn't him. I got a jolt of something. Something shifted inside of me, and I don't know what that was, but a different power, maybe a different, I don't know, intention, something. But I feel it. There's something shifting in all of us. It's time for us to move from that motivation 2.0 to motivation 3.0 for this very reason. The old way no longer works. It's time for something new, and it's becoming painfully obvious that what we have been doing is not working.
Yes.
This is the time for the light workers, for the people who really get the truth of what this is about, of oneness, of who we are, that there is something bigger and better beyond this. And this is what we are here to do. This is our work. So I implore you to do it. And besides that, it's fun.
Enjoy it.
It really is fun.
Yes,
It is
enjoy it.
fun. When you step into that truth, when your personality aligns with your purpose and what you're here to do, things flow. And that was the difference that happened for me this week. Things started just moving and flowing, and I am going out of town this week. I'm leaving for Seattle this afternoon, and I'm missing the opportunity to panel for my ordination with the people that I went through school with, because they scheduled these two events at the same time. I was very upset about that, because that's a big deal, for me to be able to panel with my friends. And so I'm going to Seattle, and I am just knowing that whatever experience is before me in Seattle is going to be amazing. Otherwise, I wouldn't be missing this other amazing time in Orlando. So I'm excited to come back next week and tell you what that's all about, because I know that there will be miracles and synchronicities and all kinds of wonderful things that happen that I will be able to bring back to you. So I think it's time for our affirmation.